My clock says 2 o'clock. I'll go ahead and get us started. So, hello everyone. Welcome to our session today. We're talking about family photos 101, scanning, organizing, and preserving. If you've missed our first part, this is kind of part two of a two-part photos session. In the first part, we talked about locating, identifying, and dating those photos. That is available on our YouTube channel. It's youtube.com/APLREF. And you can also get to it through the website apl.org if you go to our genealogy jumpstart page as well. It has the handout as well as a link to the video. So first off, we're going to talk about scanning. So of course, before you start scanning, you need to make sure, are you comfortable with technology? Many scanners are pretty easy to use. You just have to click a few buttons or push a few buttons. But of course, if you aren't super familiar, look for help in your family or your friend network. Or we also have a one-on-one tech help that we do various days and times throughout the week. That we have a volunteer here during a 2 hour window that you kind of drop in, and they might help you use our scanner here that we have at the library. If you're looking to purchase a scanner, you want to look for one that you are going to be using for certain things. So do you just need one at home to scan photos and documents? Are you going to be doing a lot of printing or copying of things? Do you need one that you're going to use on the go or scanning documents and photos in a lot of places other than your house? So kind of think about what function you want that to do for you. And how much scanning do you need to do? Do you have hundreds or thousands of papers and photos? What price point can you afford? And realize you actually don't have to buy a scanner, especially if you don't have a whole lot to scan. You can bring your copies of photos or documents to a local place, of course, those in Appleton or those anywhere you live. Or most major retailers also offer some scanning services. So I know Office Depot, you can go, bring stuff in and they'll scan it for a cost for you. You can also check with any family or friends who might let you borrow their scanner, or of course, us at the library, or check with your local library. A lot of these institutions have places that have scanners, and you can do it completely for free. So you can come scan photos and scan documents for free at the library. If you do decide to purchase one, I'll go through a few of the options for you. So this first option is kind of an all-in-one scanner, printer, copier. So just like the photo shows and what the title suggests, it's kind of all in one. So you can do scanning, you can do printing, and you can do copying of materials. Some also come with this attachment feeder, so this kind of top part where you can put your paper in there and it will automatically feed it. Of course, those can jam a little easier than the ones that don't have that. But if you have a lot of documents to scan, you can use that and it will go a lot faster. Definitely don't put your photos through that because that is not good. Some also have some attachments where you can do scanning of negatives or scanning of slides, which is really helpful if you have a lot of those to do. Of course, the price is going to depend on what brand, model, and all the different features that you want or find in whatever one you're going to purchase. Some I've seen for less than $50, some are over $100. It really depends on what you're looking for and what's available at the time that you're looking. Another option is just a flatbed scanner. So it's very similar to the all-in-one, except for this one is only going to do scanning. So you can't print, you can't copy on it, you just can scan stuff. You want to make sure, of course, that you find one that does photos and does documents. So this one is a little larger, you can tell. So the minimum size is usually that 8.5 by 11, that standard sheet of paper, but some can do legal size, so a little bit larger than that 8.5 by 11. Some also have special software where you can do photo scanning and editing with it. So if you are somebody who needs to do that, you might be looking for one that has special software. Just like the other one, some comes with that negative scanner or the slide scanner to make it a little easier for you. And the price point is very similar to the all-in-ones, but sometimes they're even a little bit more expensive depending on the features of these specific flatbed scanners. Portable scanners are also an option. So I know a lot of genealogists have talked about the FlipPal scanner. It's kind of the main one, this one right up here. It's very small and very portable. Unfortunately, they no longer sell the FlipPal, but you can still find it online on a lot of like resale sites or, sometimes I've come across them at like Goodwill or a thrift store. These are cool that they don't require a computer. You just have a little USB that it plugs into. And as you can see, it's really small. So it's really only for photos or postcards, something of that small. So you can't do that full 8.5 by 11. If you're somebody who's, oh, I'm going to go visit all these people in my family and I just want to scan all their photos on the go, that might be an option for you. They also make these wand scanners, like this photo below here. I had one for a little bit. I purchased it and it was like really cheap. It was like $20, but it's not a great quality. So some people used it for on the go, like if they wanted to digitize a book or some records. Photo-wise, it's not the greatest quality either. So I always just recommend if you're going somewhere to scan like a book or records, looking at that place, like so that library or that courthouse, maybe they have a scanner available where they can scan it in for you or make a copy for you. That's going to be a better quality than using that type of scanner. And these types of scanners also sometimes can even damage your documents. So you definitely don't want to do that because you're kind of using it and then like rubbing it against your document. So not always the best for us genealogists. In a pinch, your cell phone or tablet also has a camera built in, so you can use it to take a photo or even kind of scan photos, notes, pages from a book. You could even use a digital camera, so it's not going to be the same quite as scanning, like you would with those other equipment that we just talked about. But on the go, like you can see in this example, it's good in a pinch. I was at a church looking at some of their court or some of their church records, and I just needed a quick photo of it. I didn't need an actual scan or an actual copy of it because I didn't plan on like duplicating it somewhere. It was just for me to have for my genealogy record. So it's not the greatest photo. You can kind of see that shadow underneath. So when you're doing that, I would definitely make sure to use as much natural light as possible. Take a really close scan or photo with it, and then try to put as little space around that photo as possible. And if it's a larger document that you're trying to take a picture of, maybe take it in multiple different spots, zooming in on specific spots that are your ancestor is always helpful because you don't want to get back home and then see, oh, I couldn't quite see all of it. Of course, again, this is not going to be as perfect or as good as you would get with an actual scanner, but it's better than nothing and it's quick and fast on the go, and it's something that you probably already have in your pocket. They also make these apps that you can have on your smartphone that can sometimes take a better photo or a scan than you taking a regular photo. So I've listed a couple here. There's Google Photo Scan, PhotoMine, Film Negative Scanner, and Slide Scan. So a couple of them are owned by the same companies, but like Google Photo Scan, for example, you take an overview photo and then you have four photos that you kind of take in the corner, and it kind of walks you through where to kind of line it up. And then what it does is it stitches all of those together to make one image for you. A lot of these are available both in Apple and Google Play Store. So whether you have an Apple phone or an Android or Google phone, you should have access to these. Just search in your store where you would get any other apps. They also make these fancier kind of overhead scanners. They can go from several $100s to several thousands of dollars, depending on what features. Um, I know Cruiser or Caesar, however people pronounce it, is a cheaper option. We personally have one of these at the library. It's not available for public use, but for me, when digitizing some things like city directories or yearbooks, or we have a bunch of scrapbooks that we're trying to digitize as well, or we've worked with organizations in the community to digitize some of their stuff, we've used this where you can nicely take a book or take a big record book and scan things either one page at a time or two pages at a time, and it goes fairly fast. Many will also what they call OCR the document. So basically it looks at the text that's on the page and it kind of translates it so that it's like transcribed, and then you can search that document for those words, each of those words that are in the page. Of course, not 100% accurate, but better than not being able to search in that page. And it does not work with handwriting yet, unfortunately. These types of scanners are more geared towards like professionals or libraries that are doing like a lot of digitization of books and things like this. But of course, you're welcome to purchase one as well. You can find them on Amazon or online as well. Some libraries I've also seen as I've traveled also have similar scanners like these where if you're, finding your ancestor in a book or you want to take a scan of certain pages of a book, you can do this and use one of these types of scanners compared to the other kind of flip top scanner that you're used to seeing at the library. It's a little nicer on the book binding and all that, and sometimes takes a better quality scan. There's also going to be photo scanning companies. So if you don't want to take all the time or you don't have that technology kind of skill level to scan all your photos yourself, there are some companies who will do it for you. So there's lots of online companies that are going to provide a box for you. You essentially fill the box with the stuff, ship it to them, they'll do the work, and then they'll ship it back. Some also do other formats like audio or video if you need to convert that to a digital format. So I've listed a couple here. Ancestry.com just recently came out with one called Ancestry Preserve, where they do photo, video, and audio. There's also a Legacy Box that will also do photo, audio, and video. iMemories is just video and photo. And then, of course, you can also check companies locally, especially if you don't feel comfortable mailing stuff. If you've got a ton of photos or these precious memories that are irreplaceable, you might not feel super comfortable sending all this stuff out and hoping that you get all of it back. So check locally. So those people who live in the Appleton area, I know Shooting Star does offer scanning services, and they also do photo restoration and framing as well, if that's something you're interested in. So before you scan, of course, once you've got that scanner or you go somewhere that has a scanner, make sure that the scanner glass is very clean because you don't want that stuff being in your scan or on your photos. So usually you can just buy a cheap soft microfiber cloth. You can dampen it with some water or some glass cleaning solution, just wipe it on the glass and let it dry completely before you put your photo or anything down on that glass. And then I also want to encourage you to look at some of the scanner settings. So sometimes scanners come with preset settings where it says, okay, this is our settings that we're going to do if you're scanning a photo or a document or a negative. So you can kind of play around with those and see if you get better quality scans depending on what preset settings there are. Or you can actually monkey around with the settings yourself if you wanted to, or if you're somebody who knows a little bit more about scanning. The main thing is you want to make sure that you're going to have an appropriate file format and appropriate resolution. So resolution in scanning is measured in dots per inch. So basically, the higher dots per inch, the better the scan's going to be, but also the larger the file size is going to be. So it's going to take up a lot more space on your computer or wherever you're storing it. And it might be such a large file that you might not be able to send it over email, depending on how large the file is. But really for those small photos, the small negatives, slides, things like that, that you really want the highest quality possible because maybe you're going to make a larger copy of it, you want to scan it at the highest dots per inch possible. So it could be 1200 or 2400 or 3200. Some of the scanners might just do a preset 300. So if you are scanning some of that smaller stuff in 300, that's not the best for those types of material. You want to have a higher dots per inch, higher resolution in order to get a better quality copy of these. Most scanners can also save in different formats. So you might have heard of TIFFs or JPEGs. So TIFFs are essentially recommended for what we call archival storage. So it's going to be something that you store and kind of don't really use a whole lot. It's the highest quality image, so it's going to be the largest size possible. Whereas JPEGs, that's a more common format, and it's something that you're going to need if you're going to post online, like if you want to share your family photos on your family tree or email them back and forth with people, it's a lot smaller size. The problem with JPEGs and why we don't use them for archival storage is because every time you open a JPEG, it essentially degrades the file, not to like a super noticeable amount, but over time, if you're opening this hundreds and hundreds of times, the quality kind of slowly diminishes in that scan. And I think just having multiple copies in multiple formats is a best kind of option for you. Some scanners also do scan in PDF. So if you have some sort of like multi-page document you can preserve, like multiple pages from a book, or like handwritten stuff that you want to have multiple pages, you can scan those in PDF as well. So my recommendation, what I personally do for my photos, is I do both a TIFF copy and a JPEG copy. So I use my TIFF copy as my archival copy that I basically, keep in my file folders on my computer, and I just only use it to make additional copies, or if I'm going to send it off somewhere to get it printed or get it enlarged, that's the highest quality photo, and I don't really open it a whole lot. If you do want to share that high quality version with other family because you want it to be the best one, you can use some cloud storage stuff. So like Google Drive, Dropbox, OneDrive, those are all sites where you can upload very large files and send them because your email provider won't be able to send a very large file. And then with my second file type, the JPEG, I use those to post online. I use those if I'm going to look at it and I want to zoom in and, look at this photo from a certain event or try to look at some of those details. One of the books that I've got recommended for you in your handout is called How to Archive Family Keepsakes by Denise May Levenick. So she has this helpful kind of scanning guidelines where it's what type of scanner she recommends, what the resolution she recommends, the format that she recommends saving it in. And then there's also like a color recommendation. So certain scanning software have like different types of things that you can do. So if you're obviously scanning negatives or slides, you want to make sure it's on that negatives or slides option for transparency instead of having it scan in just color. So definitely recommend checking out that book or at least referring to this chart if you've got multiple different types of materials to scan in. Also, of course, before you scan, you want to make sure that you're prioritizing and scanning your oldest stuff, the stuff that's most fragile or the stuff that's damaged, because these are at risk of getting further damaged. So you want to make sure to scan them and preserve them as quickly as possible before it gets any worse. So again, there's some resources in your handout for specific instructions on digitizing specific photo format. So if you've got a daguerreotype or you've got a cased image, you want to make sure that you're going to scan them in a way that's not going to damage that actual original. So scanning in a tintype is going to be different than scanning a slide or scanning a printed photo from 1956. So one of the books kind of walks you through the different kind of step-by-step instructions on these specific file formats or photo formats. After you've scanned the oldest, most fragile or damaged stuff, you want to scan any other old prints, any slides, any negatives you have that are still in really good condition and that have not been digitized yet. And then lastly, of course, you're going to scan all your more recent stuff. So stuff from kind of more like the 20th century. So any of those photos, those films, those slides, those negatives that aren't already digital. Those are going to be your lowest priority, of course, because these are a lot newer. They're not as damaged and they're a lot easier to scan than some of these oldest photos that you might have. If you've come across any photos that are kind of curled at the edges and you want to learn how to uncurl them, we've got a great video from our Find Your Ancestors series that we did a couple years ago on preserving photos and heirlooms, where she walks you through a live demonstration of how to easily uncurl those photos without further damaging that photo. Of course, negatives and slides are a little bit different. So because they're so small, you need to make sure that you're doing them at the highest resolution as possible, like I mentioned. And like I said before, some of these scanners have a special negative holder that holds that film. So it holds it along the edges so that it doesn't kind of end up on the glass bed of that scanner and like damage it further or make a really bad scan. And then some of them, there's also even like special film or slide scanners that you can just purchase that plug right into your computer. It's kind of just a specific scanner. Um, so some of these unfortunately cost the same as a regular flatbed or your all-in-one printer scanner. So they might be $50 or $100. But if you are somebody who has a lot of negatives or a lot of slides to digitize, it might be worth that investment. And again, one of the book resources, Digitizing Your Family History by Rhonda McClure, has a lot of in-depth information on scanning those negatives and slides for you. If you have any photos that are in an album, what you want to do is you want to preserve them in the order that they are in that album, because whoever created that album must have had a reason for putting them in a certain order. Maybe they're chronological, maybe they're broken down by different family relation or different family members are on certain pages. If you can't remove them from the album to scan them, the best bet is to just leave them in the album, scan that whole entire album page, and then make copies of those scans, and then crop each down to each of the photos that are on that page. Some people might also have kind of like a sticky photo album where the backing is kind of really sticky and your photo kind of sticks on it. Those are the worst thing ever to have your photos in, and slowly it's going to eat your photos. So you want to get those out of those sticky albums as soon as possible. You need to be very careful when you're removing them because you could damage it. One little tip is to use dental floss and to kind of go underneath it and just like slowly wiggle it as slow as possible to, slowly get that off the sticky part. Also, I always recommend making sure that you snap a good photo or scan in a good photo of it in that sticky album before you remove it, just in case you accidentally damage the photo, because then you at least have that version of it. But of course, if you can't safely remove it, definitely scan that album, and that's going to be your best copy, unfortunately. After you've done your scanning, of course, you want to make sure to check all your images. So you want to make sure, is it as straight as possible? Did I accidentally cut off any part of it? Is it blurry for some reason? Make sure that it came out properly before you move on to the next one so that you don't go back and say, oh, all these 100 photos I just digitized, they're all cut off or they're all really crooked. So I always recommend checking each individual image as soon as you do them. Of course, rescan them if you need it before moving on to that next photo. This is also a great time for you to make sure that you're labeling your photos. So you can scan your photo and then make sure it's labeled or add your label before you go on to the next one. Both your physical photos and your digital photos. So as you're saving that scanned image, make sure you're labeling it appropriately as well, especially for those photos that you know who it is or what it is. Even if you don't know everybody or know all the details, get down as much as you know. Because remember, that label is not for you, it's for those future generations. So even though you know who is in the photo, maybe your great-great-grandchildren won't know who's in the photo. So they want you to have a label on it and for you to label it before it gets too late and that you keep putting it off and keep putting it off and then never get to it. So be sure to label your photos as soon as possible. For those digital scans, I always recommend coming up with kind of a file name format and trying to be as consistent as possible. So I might do name, then date, then the place if I know it. So doing that with every photo, then I have all of the same photos of the same people all together in one, and then I can see the dates at a glance if I happen to know them. At least putting that year is really helpful. Of course, if you have a really large group photo, you can also use a separate file if you need to identify that, because you're not going to be able to put everybody's name in that file name. Or you can just name it like, Wheeler family photo, and then have a separate document where you're identifying that large group. Other things I've done is I print a copy of that photo and then I write the labels on the copy and then I rescan that labeled copy and use it as my identification copy and I save it in my digital files. So here's an example of that. I've got this great family photo that I got from my grandma, and on the back, whoever originally had the photo had labeled it by the names. But what I did then is I made it a little bit more clear. I said left to right, who is who, and I added some dates. I added some married names of the women, and then I wrote down here that I provided some additional information and where I got the photo from and where she got the photo from. So I got it from my grandma, who got it from her great grand or got it from her mom. So now I know where all this information is coming from, and the next person who looks at this photo identification knows exactly where it came from. You might also think about editing photos. If you have a little bit of technology skill, or sometimes some of these software, it's just really easy. You can click a button and it magically will edit the photo or crop the photo, or you maybe want to brighten it or play around with some colorization. I always recommend doing that original scan, having that original scan unaltered, making another copy of that scan or more than one, and then editing the copy so that you always still have that original, and then all the copies you might have will be those edited ones that you've played around a little bit with. So, for example, on the left here, I've got an original scan of a slide of my dad during his high school graduation. You can see the coloring's a little bit off, it's a little dark. And then I just put it through some sort of software that color corrected it. They lightened it up a little bit, and you can kind of tell, okay, is his gown actually blue or is it white? I don't know. But based off the coloring, you can see the difference between the original that I scanned in and that corrected one, that it thinks those are the right colors. Any questions so far before we move on to the second half? What about you online folks? Any questions? I'll also post the handout again for you. All right, we'll move on then. So now we're talking a little bit about organizing photos. So there's essentially two main ways that you can organize your physical photos. You can organize them by what kind they are, so all those cased images, all those prints, all those slides, or what size they are. Or you can organize them by subject, by event, by family, by place. Basically, what you need to do though is develop your own little organization system based on what you plan to do with your photos and kind of go from there. So, do you plan to store those photos in a closet or do you plan to display them? So, think about what you're going to do. Are you going to make copies of them? I always recommend not displaying the originals. So, make a copy of that one that you want to display and display the copy because the light that's coming from outside damages photos over time. So if you have an original photo that's, 100 years old, it's already got a little damage on it, possibly from being exposed to light. So you want to make sure to have a copy and then display that copy instead. Are you planning on putting your photos in an album or archival storage boxes? Well, I've got a few recommendations for you coming up, so hold tight. For your digital photos, again, you can organize by subject, event, family, place. I am a little more organized than some people, I think, digitally. So I have a bunch of subfolders. So I have one huge genealogy photo or folder, and then within that genealogy folder, I've got a folder for my dad's side of the family, a folder for my mom's side of the family, and then within those, I've got surname folders in each of those. So on my dad's side of the family, I've got the Stilp family folder. And then within there, I've got different groups of, the different generations. So all the things that are related to Jacob and Mary go in that folder. All the things that are related to Melvin and Florence go in that folder so that they're all broken down by who's in that family in that couple group. We're going to talk a lot more about organization in September. So in September 15th, we're talking about organizing all your physical genealogy materials. On September 29th, we'll talk all about organizing those digital materials. So this is kind of just a small little preview of what or how you can organize this stuff, but we'll go a lot more in depth in September. Again, don't forget to label your physical photos too. Do that as you are organizing them. Put as much information as you know. Who is who, what photo, what date that photo was taken, where it was taken, maybe why it was taken for a wedding or something, where the photo came from or who it came from. So putting as much information as possible. So like for an example, I've got a photo of my great-grandparents. I list them by name, what date it was taken, where it was taken. It was taken at their daughter's wedding. And then I got that photo from my great grandma in this year. So now I know exactly where it came from and how it was identified and all that kind of good stuff. Here's some information that you can include in those labels or those captions of those people or a specific person. So making sure that you have their full name, including their maiden name or married name for the women if you know them, their dates of birth and death, the name of the photographer if you happen to know who took it, the date that it was taken, what event it might depict, who the original owner is, or where you found that image from, or who you got that image from, and then your name and date saying that you are the one who labeled that image so that that person knows where that identification is coming from if it wasn't already on that photo. If it's of a place instead of a person, of course, putting that geographic location, you can have a title of the image if you happen to know that it's a specific title of something, who took the photo, when it was taken, and then again, that original owner or a citation of where you found it or who you got it from. So it also depends on the type of photo, how you're going to label them. So you can't physically write on a cased image. So the best way to label those is going to be using a special archival photo envelope or a box, and then labeling that envelope or that box, and then putting that image within that box or that envelope. For all types, of course, you're never going to use regular pen ink. You don't want to use just one of these that you got from, Walmart or wherever, or a regular pencil. You want to use a special archival pen or pencil that is specifically for photos. So the pencils have to be a special soft lead pencil. There's a brand option called Stabilo. The pens you want to make sure are waterproof, that they're fade resistant, that they're permanent, that they're odorless, that they're quick drying. We also try to use black ink as much as possible because colored ink tends to fade over time. So if you're using blue ink or green ink, it's going to fade a lot faster than the blue ink. And a brand option of one of those that I've used is called Sakura. You can easily get these from any kind of art supply or scrapbook type store like Michael's or anything like that, or you can, of course, purchase them online. Of course, they're going to be a little bit more expensive than our regular pens and pencils that we would buy just to use in our day-to-day life, but they're going to be worth it because you don't want to ruin your photos with, using these cheap pens and pencils where it might, bleed through the photo or damage your photo. You want to spend, a few dollars more to make sure you're using a pen or a pencil that's not going to damage that photo. Of course, for those really old and really fragile photos or the types that you can't write on, again, you might want to put them in some sort of archival photo envelope and then label the envelope and not the actual photo. Of course, when you're going to write this label, though, on that envelope, make sure you do it before you put the photo in there. Otherwise, you could damage that photo as you're writing on the envelope. For those envelopes, you also want to make sure that they're acid and lignin free. So acid free just means that it has a neutral pH when they manufactured it. It's very important for extending the life of all of our materials. And then lignin, if you've never heard of it, it's actually found in wood that they use to make the paper. So if they leave the lignin in, it makes the paper a lot more acidic over time. So it discolors the paper a little bit more. It becomes more brittle. So of course, when we're using our precious family photos in this, we want to make sure that it's not going to damage or discolor that stuff or kind of eat away at our photos. So when you're looking for things, just make sure it for sure says acid and lignin free. So I've got a couple little samples of some products for you. This is not an endorsement of any of these, of course, but these are some of the options that I found online for you. So these ones are cool in that they are envelopes that have spots for you right here in this box where you can write a subject, you can write a date, you can write a place, or a little description on each of these. So this came from a website called Archival Methods. Of course, we've got the Stabilo pencils, so this is what those look like. They come in multiple different colors. And I can click on it just to kind of show you what it looks like and what cost they are. So you can get a whole box of them. It looks like there's 12 of them for $16. Oh, that's a 5-pack. A 6-pack is 18, 12-pack is 36. So again, depending on if you want multiple colors, I just recommend using black personally, but it's up to you if you want to use different colors for different things. These also work on glass and metal. So if you're somebody who does canning a lot and you want to label your jars, you can also use those on there as well. And then this is an example of a Sakura pen, which you can buy in different widths. So some of them can be really, really thin, or some of them can be really, really thick. And so an example of this one is going to be on Gaylord Archival, and it's about $7 for just one of them, or you can buy usually a pack of several of them. So those are a few of the options I found for you. All right. One of the big things is you don't want to ever write on the front of the image like this person did on this photo. You don't want to use a label maker like this person did on that photo. This causes damage over time. You want to make a copy of it, and if you plan on doing it that way, make a copy and put it on the copy, not on the original. These are very old historic photos, so this one is the original photo that I scanned in, and somebody unfortunately wrote over the top of it, and you can see it must not have been stored properly because it's got this kind of like crease mark in it that's kind of damaging the photo over time. And this photo is really old. It's from the 1880s or early 1890s. So over time, it's going to continue getting worse and worse if the person who has the original is not taking care of it. This here is just a regular photocopy that the person made, and they put the label over the photocopy. And unfortunately, the person never wrote down where they got it from, so we can't even find the original or who has the original of this photo. So again, that's why it's so important to label your photos and where you got them from so that people in the future can know where it came from. Now we're talking a little bit about preserving photos. So again, like I mentioned earlier, we've got those kind of sticky or magnetic photo albums. Even if they say archival quality on them, you do not want to use them. So something like this that's old and it's got that sticky background, the worst thing ever that you can do for your photos. Again, even if it says archival quality, you got to be a little bit hesitant because unfortunately they can use the term archival, even though archivists, which are trained professionals, do not recommend them. So again, you want to make sure to find that magical phrase that said acid-free, lignin-free. That's really what you're looking for. Even if it says archival, it might not be acid-free and lignin-free, which is why you got to make sure that it does say that. And again, these fun magnetic photos or the sticky backing photos came out in the 1960s. So unfortunately, you might have inherited some of those. And get them out of those photo albums as soon as possible and as safely and slowly as possible without damaging the photos.
What about when the glue sticks to the back of the photo?
I don't know if there's anything you can do with the glue sticking on the back of the photo. Of course, scan in as best as you can. I don't know of any cleaner that I would use on it to try to remove it because I wouldn't want to damage the photo.
Just remove it.
Yeah, just yeah.
The risk.
And then yeah, as much as you can, just you know, maybe taking like a microfiber cloth on the back of it might pick up a little bit of it, but I don't know that I'd put any solution or anything on it to try to get that off. When you are storing your photos, you want to make sure that they are in a cool but not super cold place and a dry environment. So 68 degrees is kind of the optimal temperature. Of course, if it's a few degrees higher or a few degrees lower, it's not going to kill your photos. But the important part also is to avoid those temperature extremes. So if you go from a super cold environment to a super hot environment, that can cause those prints to become really dry and brittle and then start to crack over time. You also don't want to put them somewhere it's going to be super humid or super damp because that can cause your photos to curl on the edge or to warp. A lot of people put photos in an interior closet because those tend to be a cool space, a dry space. It avoids exposure to light, again, which over time, light causes those images to fade. So we don't want direct sunlight or even indirect sunlight on it. If you're going to put your photos on display, you want to make sure to use a copy of that photo and not the original. I always recommend trying not to reframe or force any antique photos into a new case or into a new frame. If you can safely remove the frame from a photo, go ahead, because sometimes you might get lucky and find a bonus photo or some information that they might have had on the back. But if you can't safely remove it without possibly ruining that image, then it's just better to leave it than ruin it. If you have something like this one over here, which is a photo of my great grandpa, in this cardboard sleeve that these kind of photographers had, they have their little photographer mark on the bottom. So I can see it's from Carl Thomas Studios in Madison. So I know, okay, he was living in Madison like around 1930. I've got him in the city directory in Madison during that year. So this is also helping me kind of date this photo of when it was taken then. You also need to make sure that your films are going to be safe. So if you have any of those old negatives, those old films, those old slides, you want to make sure they're going to be safe before you decide to store them properly, because some of that old stuff was made with something called cellulose nitrate, which is very highly explosive. So you don't want to, ruin all your stuff. Some of the improved films were then made with cellulose acetate, but these are subject to something called vinegar syndrome. So over time, the film degrades and essentially turns into vinegar. So if you ever notice some sort of like vinegar type smell, you want to remove those photos that smell like that immediately before it causes more damage to everything else that it is in your collection. So again, try to copy and digitize those as soon as possible and then dispose of them properly. Unfortunately, because they're highly explosive, they're considered hazardous waste. You can't just throw them in your regular trash. So contact your local waste disposal office for how to properly get rid of those without causing further damage. And the book, How to Archive Family Keepsakes, goes into this a lot more in depth about how you can actually test your photos to see if they're made with cellulose nitrate or cellulose acetate. So if you're somebody who's just not really sure, or, oh, I don't smell vinegar on it. Well, maybe now you don't smell vinegar on it, but maybe in 20 years it develops that vinegar syndrome and it's starting to degrade that photo over time. So they've talked to a little bit more in depth about that specifically in the book, How to Archive Family Keepsakes. So what do you do with those photos then after you've scanned them and you want to store them long term? Well, it's going to depend on what type of photo it is. So those cased images, which are those really, really old daguerreotypes, tintypes, ambrotypes, you want to put them essentially in a little box. So there's these kind of individual archival boxes. So each of these cased images should have its own little box. And then you can put those smaller boxes into a bigger archival box if you'd like. But it's really important that the folder enclosures and the box are going to fit that image really snugly because you don't want to have the photo moving around a ton. You want basically a box that's going to fit it pretty snug, but not super snug that you're forcing it in there. And not super loose that it's going to be moving around and scratching it possibly. So I always recommend storing one of those per box because they're so fragile, they're so old and historic, you don't want to damage them by putting multiple ones in one box. And again, I found this from Gaylord Archival, so a lot of these online sites, you can find these archival safe things to store them in. For some of those black and white photos, they have these kind of larger boxes where you can store multiple ones. So it's basically archival grade paper, or they have also archival quality plastic sleeves or envelopes that you can store your photos in. So they recommend storing all those same size prints together. So if you've got a bunch of 3x5s or 5x10s or 8x10s, putting those of the same size together and then stack them carefully to avoid scratching them. Of course, if you have any really rare or slightly damaged prints, I would put those in an individual envelope or an individual sleeve and not stack them with multiple other ones. And they recommend storing them vertically instead of, putting like them horizontally and like a bunch on top of another. So you can put them in little envelopes and put them in one of these boxes, or if they're all of the same size and kind of same type, you can store multiple ones in the same box. If you've got colored photographs, these are the ones that are really especially prone to fading over time, especially if they're exposed to light. But even those stored in the darker, like boxes like these, could be susceptible to color shift or they get like a yellow haze on them. It's just because of how the film originally was made. That's why you always want to make sure to scan in your photos so you have that backup copy in case this happens or before this happens to your color photos. Again, just like the other types of photos, you want to store those same size prints together. You want to stack them carefully, avoid scratching them against each other. And then you can store those envelopes vertically in a same size archival box, just like they do here. So they've got quite a few of these envelopes and they have multiple photos in each of these envelopes. So you could kind of do them by month and year or by subject, however you wanted to do them. Maybe put all your photos of your great grandma in one folder and then the next folder is your great grandpa or whoever you want to put in there, or however you want to organize your photos. If you've got any slides, you can also store these vertically in archival boxes, but they also make these cool plastic sleeves. If you do use these plastic sleeves, just make sure you're not bending or forcing the slides into those little slots. You want to make sure that it's snug, but not so snug that you're like forcing the slide into it. They also make like a binder box where it's essentially like a binder that goes within a box where you can put these sleeves of slides in it. And I've got a photo of what it looks like on the next slide. But you can essentially put all your slides in these sleeves and then put those sleeves in the binder, and then it closes like a cool archival box. These also should be in cold storage, but again, not super, super cold. But they can also be preserved almost indefinitely if they are kept at a certain temperature, so they don't degrade like some of the other photo types. But if you take them from that cold storage and move them to a room temperature storage and it kind of warms up really quickly, if it's like big temperature extreme, sometimes it could cause some moisture to get into those slides or to those sleeves. So just be careful with that you're kind of, not moving it from one temperature to extreme to another when you're bringing them out. So this is kind of what I was talking about. So it's not a photo of the slides in here, but you could put your slide sleeves in this box type thing that's like a binder and a box within one. Another option is they have these smaller boxes and they've got envelopes that you can put your slides in individually so that they're not rubbing against each other. And then you'd put each slide in an envelope and then each envelope within these little boxes. And then it can go into a bigger box. So it's like, you're starting small and then going big essentially, but it's quite a few things to have to purchase all for just one type of thing. But this actually comes as a whole kit, so you're not having to buy those things individually. If you've got negatives, of course, don't just assume, hey, we already have prints of these and throw them away. They possibly could not be printed ever. Unless they're damaged in any way, you can actually still get prints from them. And it sometimes is better results than even scanning a print of it if you happen to have a print of that same one that you have in the negative. But really similar to the slides, you can also store these in those paper or those plastic archival envelopes or sleeves, and then store them in a box or a binder box, and again, keep them in a cool location. I've got a couple places for you listed on the page and in your handout about where you can purchase some of these archival materials that are recommended from librarians and archivists. So these are all properly vetted companies that I've used either through the library or through my own archiving and preserving my own personal history stuff. Again, archival quality supplies for photos are not cheap. unfortunately. Of course, you're paying for, a little bit more quality materials than your regular stuff that you can buy in an office store. So I always recommend buying a little bit at a time. You don't have to buy all of it right now and spend hundreds and hundreds of dollars. Again, start with your most oldest stuff or your stuff that's, most at risk of being damaged more. So your oldest like cased images, if you have any of those, or your slides that are, not properly stored right now, purchase that first and then slowly buy more over time. And those are the companies. Again, I've got them in your handout for you as well. There's also a really great archival storage guide in the book, How to Archive Family Photos. So she kind of goes through all the different items to store, how to organize them, what types of archival materials she uses in those. So you can go through and say, okay, I've got a photo album. I'm going to interleave pages with interleaving tissue for those. I'm going to store it flat or store it vertically. So she's giving you options and recommendations based on what she would do for long-term storage for those. I also found this from the Family Photo Detective, Maureen Taylor. She's got this great book where she has photo worksheets for each of the photos, and she kind of goes through these. You can even get a little template in the book where you can copy a blank one of these and then use them for your prints if you're somebody who needs a little bit more of I need to remember what exactly I want to put on this as I'm identifying it and writing things about it. So she's got some helpful resources in her books as well on what to do with your family photos. So just quickly going through some of these books that I have in your handout and the ones that I recommend that you check out for a little bit more information. So this one is How to Archive Family Photos. It's a step-by-step guide to organizing and sharing your photos digitally. It's a little bit old. It's from 2015, but the advice hasn't really changed much over the years. There's no new technology or anything that's happened that's going to change her advice. She's got a lot of cool ideas also for what to some of your photos if you want to do some fun photo projects. She goes really in depth on the different types of scanners and digitizing photos, what to do with all those photos once you digitize them. She's also got another book on archiving family keepsakes. So if you need to learn a little bit more about preserving those family photos or other memorabilia and genealogy records, she's got a separate book for that as well. We've also got this book, Digitizing Your Family History, Easy Methods for Preserving Your Heirloom Documents, Photos, Home Movies, and More in a Digital Format. Again, it's a little bit older, but what I really liked about this book is she has a really great section on how to digitize audio and videotapes, as well as photos. So I didn't go into any detail in digitizing audio and video because I personally haven't done it myself. Or have a need to do it myself because my family didn't have any audio or videotapes that they ever took of us. So if you have a need of that, definitely check out that book for some of her recommendations. We've got Preserving Your Family Photographs, How to Organize, Present, and Restore Your Precious Family Images. So this is by Maureen Taylor. She's got a really great timeline with a little history on photography. She goes through a little bit more in depth on those major photo types that we talked about in our first session and how to handle them each in depth. And then she also talks about conserving those and restoring those photos if you have any damaged ones that you might want to try to conserve or restore them a little bit more. There's also one on photo restoration that talks a little bit more about how to restore some of these historic photos to make them a little clearer now with our technologies that we have nowadays. And then again, I wanted to point out this video that we have on our YouTube channel, all about preserving family photos and heirlooms that we did a few years ago. It's on our YouTube channel. She goes through a little bit more in depth on how to do all the things and different types of heirlooms that you can preserve in addition to photos as well. So I've got that link for you in the handout. That was a short session today. I didn't have as much to cover since we covered so much also in our first photo session. But I hope you'll join me next time on Tuesday, August 25th. So just in 2 weeks, we're going to talk all about researching your international ancestors. In the meantime, this Thursday at 6 p.m. is our regular Find Your Ancestors session where we're going to talk about researching your house history, which Angie Knutson, who presented this program all about preserving family photos and heirlooms, is going to be the same one talking about our house history. So we're very fortunate to have her and her knowledge of researching house history and preserving stuff. So it's also a great time to come and ask her questions if you want to chat with her. She is so helpful and knowledgeable about especially local stuff in Appleton area. You guys have any questions or any more specific recommendations or things that you're looking for? I'm happy to see what I can answer for you. See, one question. What do you use to identify photos? Pen, pencil, what kind? So I went through some of those pens and pencil options for you, whether you're a pen person or a pencil person. It's kind of more personal preference, just making sure that you're using those specific types of pens and pencils, not your regular everyday pen and pencil. It has to be the photo safe ones. Or again, you can always, use another type of printer paper and then identify it on that instead of on the photo. So like I did with my big family photo back here. So you could again do something like this. When I identified it with this, I just used regular pen on a piece of printer paper and I wrote on it instead of writing on the back of the photo. Somebody else in the family had written with regular ink on the back of that photo. So I just did another separate identification on a separate piece of paper instead of adding further to the back of the photo. So that's an option for you as well. All right. Any other questions, anybody? All right. Well, take care. Thanks for joining us, and thanks for joining us for our rescheduled session. I know it was a little scary here for a few days when we didn't have power and we were dealing with storm cleanup. So I appreciate everybody's patience as we worked to reschedule this program. And if you have any questions, feel free to reach out.
Thank you, Katie.
Yeah.
Very informative.
Take care, everyone. I'll see you in 2 weeks.